Hello, my name is Kathy Creasy, Executive Director of Leadership Development and Discipleship. My guests today are Melissa Minter and Darren Schalk. Melissa is the children's pastor at the Central Community Church in Chatsworth, Georgia, and also serves on the advisory team for International Children's Ministry. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks for inviting me to be here.
We're glad you're here. Darren is curriculum editor for the international offices as well as our chapel pastor. In his local church, Darren and his wife Christy serve as leaders of group ministry. Welcome, Darren.
Hey, sorry, I was muted. I'm here now.
Okay. Okay, we're glad you're here. Okay, we're glad to have you also, our audience on this Facebook Live. Our March and April Facebook Live sessions, if you were with us, introduced you to the Minister's Development Program, as well as our first and second courses, the Minister in God's Word and the Minister's Personal Life. Our guests today, Melissa and Darren, are going to help us help introduce us to the third course in the program, which is the Minister and Practical Ministry. Both Melissa and Darren were contributors to this course. So we'll start with Melissa. Melissa, tell me about the lesson you wrote for this course.
Okay. Well, the lesson I wrote is Essential Elements of Effective Youth and Children's Ministries. And it encourages those who participate basically to really recognize the significance of ministry to children and youth and understand what's required to take those elements and implement them in the local church. There are basically three main sections. The first one focuses on the value of ministry to children and youth. I look at it as the heart of this because you have to understand the value before you can implement. So just why does ministry to youth and children matter? And then the second section dives into just the best practices of youth and children's ministry. What do we need to be doing to reach youth, to reach children, and to sustain those ministries for the long term? It includes a lot of practical steps in how to develop those type of ministries. And then the third section was designed to really help pastors identify their role in developing youth and children's ministry. Because the pastor's the shepherd of the church, his or her role is so critical to developing this ministry. And their pastors are so busy and have so much to look at. Right. And hopefully what this course will do is really give them a foundation, just kind of understand where to build on and where to go with their leaders. So that's basically kind of it.
Excellent. I think this lesson is going to be a great tool for our pastors to help them evaluate their own children's ministry, to help them know how to lead their children's ministry team, and just to build a more effective ministry because the pastor has a better understanding of what that ministry needs to look like. So I think it's going to be a great asset to our pastors and also to our children and youth leaders. I think it's going to be very good for all of them. So I just want to say it's an excellent lesson. I enjoyed reading it. Thank you for writing it. So let's talk to Darren for a minute. Darren, you contributed a lesson that is also very relevant to the local church. Tell us about that lesson.
Yeah, well, as we're trying to come back better and stronger in such a challenging time, I had the great opportunity to contribute to the lesson, Developing and Leading Small Group Ministry. I was honored to help in this role because I believe in the small group ministry of the local church. I have been a part of that ministry for the past 14, actually 17 or 18 years, if you count even my time in as a youth pastor before I stepped into the editor role here at the offices. So we've worked in the Sunday school realm, we've worked in the small group realm. My wife and I are currently working in our local church, leading our small group ministry. So I believe in this ministry firmly. So I was excited to help write uh, a lesson about how we actually get to this idea of small groups. I heard a minister once say that he didn't do small groups in his church because everyone he knew was either just kicking them off for the first time or kicking them off for the fourth, fifth, or sixth time, as they were unable to sustain it. So when I sat down to write this, and as we've worked through this in our local church and with other churches over the years, I wanted to provide something that they can take that will help them build a sustainable model, something that won't fizzle out in 6 months or that you'll be restarting next year. And so I've tried to take that practical approach as we put this lesson together. So we wrote about the biblical need for small groups. You'll get that in the lesson. I wrote about how they can be the main tool, and I believe should be the main tool of discipleship in your church, and why that is. We look at the biblical model, some of the practical ideas of discipleship, and how we integrate those into the small group model. And then the final portion of the lesson is simply about practical steps to actually get this thing going, get it off the ground, and keep it going for years to come, so that you're creating healthy, vibrant small groups who are creating disciples and recreating disciples.
That's great. Darren's lesson has the unique um, position of being the first of our ministers development lessons that we've rolled out. And really the reason for that is it got rolled out way ahead of everything else because we did realize how relevant it is to ministry during this crisis. I've talked to many pastors during the crisis just to see what they're doing and how they're doing. And so many of our local churches, the pastors have expressed that they've been dependent on small group leaders to maintain connections and to provide spiritual and emotional as well as physical support. And some local churches that did not have small group prior to the crisis, the pandemic, they initiated small groups at the beginning so that their members could have the connection and support that they needed. So I think it's so important and so thankful for the small group ministry that's been a part of the Church of God of Prophecy for many, many years. But
Yes,
now now we're seeing it even as more significant and relevant. So Darren, I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the future of small group ministry when we return to church? And the second part of that question, what could small group ministry look like?
Yeah, I've spent some time really pondering that question. We've had a lot of time to sit around and ponder here recently. We're back in the offices now, but we were home for a little while. And so I have wondered about that question and have spent some time on it. And in my processing and praying, I feel that we've been provided a divine opportunity for us to remember Christ's call to discipleship through this. Over the course of the past 25 years, there has been somewhat of a shift, and I wouldn't even say somewhat of a shift, it's been a pretty blatant shift of moving our churches from toward the big event. And we've really focused on the big event, and we've gotten very good at the big event. And I'm thankful for the big event that our churches have, but we've lost that. It has been taken from us, and we quickly realized what we were missing. We were missing our small group gatherings in many places. And as you said, if you didn't have small groups before this pandemic, then you probably have them now. You realize they're
Yeah,
important.
right,
So
right.
we had that move to the big event, and the dilemma wasn't that we were focusing on the big event. The dilemma was we were doing it at the expense of our smaller events, our smaller groups. And so as we shine the spotlight on the big event, we were often letting the small group gatherings just disappear and dwindle altogether. And so I think this crisis has really reminded us of the importance of smallness, particularly in the discipleship role of the church. When we talk about groups, we're talking about small groups, and we're talking about taking that big event that we have become so good at producing and breaking them into the smaller means. And we see that in Jesus' role. It's the model he gave us for creating his disciples. And I think it's the model that we have to return to. So as I look to the future, I see a lot of small. And I think that's an excellent path to be taking, because I think we lost the role of small over the past few years, and so we need the small to really create disciples of Christ as He intended us. And the lesson gets to the idea of that and the heart of that. And I think we need more than Sunday morning fair weather Christians, and to get that, we need more than Sunday morning fair weather services. That's my belief. So
Right.
as I look to the future, I believe the future looks smaller rather than larger, and I'm thankful for that. I think it
Right.
provides a wonderful opportunity for us to again focus and zero in on the idea of discipleship, spiritual growth in our people.
Yes. And I want to say, as Darren is sharing these things, that this course is online, it's free, and you can enroll at lddcogop.org. So if you're a pastor or a leader of a small group, or the small group ministry leader at your local church, or just want more information about small group ministry, please take that on. Go to lddcogop.org. The other thing I want to say that just came to mind, and I'm sorry I don't have my issue right in front of me, but the May issue of the White Wing was developed by our leadership development staff and directors, and the theme of it, Discipleship, a Forgotten Command. Darren also has an article on small group ministry in that issue as well. So if you would like to think more about discipleship for your local church, I suggest that you get that issue of the White Wing Messenger and read the articles. I think they're very relevant and informative, not just about small group ministry, but about the process, the entire process of discipleship in the local church. So thank you so much, Darren. Let's target Melissa now and ask a few more questions. I was excited this week when I went on Facebook and I saw Melissa and her daughter on YouTube doing a Sunday morning children's worship service live. And that was just so great. I loved it. It was well done. Melissa, thinking about children's ministry in the future, what do you think will be some of the positive effects of our social isolation on children's ministry?
Well, I think this time has forced children's ministries to look at new ways to reach children. So much of what we did in ministry was focused primarily within the church walls. You know, someone had to bring the children there to receive ministry. But I've come to realize that there's so much more, particularly for me in the area of technology, than just a Facebook page or a Facebook group. You know, I thought I was using technology by doing that. But for example, what you saw, we've created a YouTube channel for our kids ministry during this time. And what I'm hoping to do is continue, even when we return to the physical building, to continue adding content to that. I've often I've thought of ways, you know, can bring families in for special services. And it just kind of dawned on me a couple weeks ago, wait a minute, I don't have to bring them in. I can give the service to them. And then parents can do what God has called them to do, and that's disciple their children sitting in their living room. You know, they don't have to just bring them to church, but I can provide resources, and not just those take-home papers that get tossed and forgotten. But this is something, you know, full services, activities, family devotions, all these video resources that just never occurred to me to do before. So I think if children's ministers will grab on to whatever it is that they have used that's worked in their ministry and find a way to continue that, I think our ministries will be stronger and better because of it.
I do too. And more valued. I think there's going to be a greater value on what we do for our children because we've realized the necessity during this time. And the other point you mentioned, I think there's several things that we're seeing through this pandemic as churches address this social isolation and the inability to be together for services. And I think we've talked about three right here today that I see as trends that are going to impact the church in the future. And one is the value of small group. Two is that technology is our new norm. And finally, that families play an important role in the nurture of our children. And we've kind of given them an opportunity to do their thing. And we've just provided the support like you were doing with your
Yeah.
Facebook Live
Yeah.
this week. So I think it's powerful. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I just want to say anything else that either of you would like to say before we just share more information about this minister and the minister and practical ministry. Anything else, Darren?
No, we're just praying for you. And we trust that God will lead and guide and direct you as you try to follow his footsteps at a very difficult time.
Right, right. Melissa?
Just hoping that these courses that have been developed will speak to the local church, to speak to pastors, that it won't just be another thing to do or
Right.
to listen to, that it will
Yeah.
impact their ministry and impact the kingdom.
Amen.
Yes, that's our prayer every day as we are working through editing now and working through instructional design and translation. That is our prayer. So you hit the heart of it. Thank you so much. So thank you so much. And I want to say to both of you, thank you for sacrificially sharing your education, your experience, and your calling to write these lessons. Both of you wrote based on your calling, and I really love that. So thank you so much. To all of you who are watching today, who are participating with us in this Facebook Live, I just want to review with you what the titles of the course of the lessons are in this course, because I think you will be interested. I also want to share who our writers are, because you will recognize some of them, I'm sure. The first lesson in the course, the minister and practical ministry, is the role of the pastor, and that is being developed by Dan Chatham, who is a well-experienced pastor in Canada. Preaching and Teaching to Bring Transformation has been written by Brian Sutton. He is the overseer, the presiding bishop of Alabama now, but he was the Leadership Development and Director Executive, Leadership Development and Discipleship Executive Director just a few years ago, and very gifted in preaching and teaching. A Pentecostal Theology and Practice of the Sacraments is written by Phil Pruitt, and Phil is our overseer of California. Also, Phil is the chairman of our Biblical Doctrine and Polity Committee. The Congregational Worship Service has been written by Joshua Dasher, and Joshua is the worship leader at Key Street Ministries here in Cleveland, Tennessee, and it's an excellent lesson. Of course, Developing and Leading Small Group Ministry is written by Darren Schalk, and you've heard about it today. The Pastor in Biblical Counseling is written by Michael Hernandez. He is a counselor, and you have met him recently in one of our webinars. But he's also the director of Accredited Ministries Development here in our offices. And finally, Essential Elements of Youth and Children's Ministry, as you know, was written by Melissa Minter. So I just wanted you to know about these courses. And again, I reiterate what Melissa said. It is our heart that these courses will not just be something you do, but something that goes deep in your heart as pastors and ministry leaders, that it will be used to develop within you greater understanding, greater inspiration, and all those things that you need to develop effective ministries. So just a reminder that these courses will be offered at no cost online or through on-site instruction that can be coordinated by a regional leader or through the international offices. We hope to have these first courses of the program available to you very soon, no later than the fall, and we hope that you will enroll. I want to say to all of you today, thank you for joining us, and thanks to Melissa and Darren for sharing with us. Our next Leadership Development and Discipleship Facebook Live will be next Tuesday with our Accredited Ministries Development Director, Michael Hernandez. I want to remind you that during this time of uncertainty, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, God's people have suffered loss of family members, loss of jobs and finances, loss of health, loss of connections with those they love. But even in this loss, there is has also been a sense of God being fully present that will enable us as individual Christians and as congregations to come back stronger. Leadership development has provided webinars, daily inspiration, strategy videos, as well as links to resources that we hope will guide you as you consider reopening the local church facilities, and hoping that this will help God's people come back stronger, focused on his mission of seeking and saving lost people. I want you to know that our LDD team and the staff of the international offices are praying for you and for every local church all around the world. If you have specific requests, please let us know on the COGOP Facebook page. God bless you today. In your personal life, may you come back stronger, knowing God in a greater way.